Hello everyone, Dr. A. So this is going to be part one of the reproductive system. We're going to look at the male reproductive system and well, first the introduction and then the male reproductive system, and then I'll do a part two with the female reproductive system. So the male and female reproductive systems are a series of glands and tubes that produce and nurture the sex cells and then transports them to the site of fertilization. The male sex cells are the sperm, the female sex cells are the oocytes, also often referred to as eggs. Some reproductive organs secrete the hormones needed for the development and maintenance of your secondary sex characteristics and to regulate reproductive function. So that would be, for example, in the males, the testes will secrete testosterone. Testosterone allows for the production of sperm, but also for the maintenance of muscle mass, facial hair, and all of that. Whereas in the female, the ovaries are going to secrete estrogen and progesterone, and estrogen and progesterone will allow all part of the monthly cycles, and we're going to look at that, allow for the release of the egg on a regular schedule, but then also maintenance and development and maintenance of features such as the breast and the characteristic female curves and stuff. All right. Let's talk about the organs of the male reproductive system. So the design of the male sex organs are to transport the sperm to the eggs. The primary sex organs, also known as the gonads, will produce the sperm and the hormones. Those are the testes. And the accessory sex organs have a supportive function, and so those are things like the prostate gland, seminal vesicle, etc. We'll cover those too. So the testes are ovoid structure. So if you will, they're like egg-shaped, and they're suspending by a spermatic cord in the scrotum. So they're hanging by a cord, which is also why they can move up and down depending on the temperature. Each of the testes is made up of about 250 lobules that are separated by connective tissue. Each lobule will hold 1 to 4 highly coiled seminiferous tubules. And seminiferous means that has the word semen, so it's part of producing semen, and it's actually part of producing sperm. The seminiferous tubules are lined with stratified epithelium that contain their spermatogenic cells. Those give rise to sperm cells. And then there are channels that lead from the seminiferous tubules, and they carry the sperm that's been produced to the epididymis and the ductus deferens. The epididymis we'll see is the site of maturation for the sperm, and the ductus deferens or vas deferens is the tube that would convey it to the outside. And then there's also some other cells that are around these seminiferous tubules, and they're called interstitial cells or cells of Leydig, and they produce your male hormones, your androgens, DHEA, testosterone, and stuff like that. So the hormones that give guys their male characteristics. So here I'm gonna point out real quickly all the structures of the male reproductive tract. So we're gonna start right here. Here's the ovoid or egg-shaped testes right there. On top of it is the epididymis. So this part right here on top. So this is where sperm is going to mature up. And then from there we have the vas deferens or ductus deferens. It's the tube that's going to carry it, and it goes up above the bladder, around the bladder, and then it's going to pick up stuff from the seminal vesicle right here. This is the prostate, so it's merging here with the urethra in the prostate, and so then the ductus deferens and the urethra become one, and now it's just called the urethra. And so urine comes out this way, semen comes this way. This little gland right here, this tiny little gland here, is called the bulbourethral gland. We're going to talk about it. It helps with lubrication during sex. And then the urethra, of course, goes out here through the penis. And we're going to look at all the components. But you have, the glans penis, the prepuce, which, again, is the foreskin. And then within the penis, there's 2 different types of tissue. You have your corpus cavernosum right here, right there, and your corpus spongiosum wrapped around the urethra. So, yeah, that's all the structures. This is the bladder right here. This is the colon right there. Okay, so if you take a testes right here, and you just, you cut it, you can see the parts of the lobules right here with the seminiferous tubules. There are seminiferous tubules, and they have tubes, right, that connect them to the epididymis here, where they're going to go mature up. And then, of course, this is the ductus deferens that's going to leave and convey it to the outside. Now, if you took one of these seminiferous tubules and look at a cross-section of it, what you would see is within the seminiferous tubules, all these cells here are spermatogonia cells. Okay, so they are basically sperm stem cells, if you will. And they're going to give rise to sperm, and they'll mature up as it gets closer and closer to the lumen, which is the opening in the middle of the tube where the little sperm can travel. Okay, and then if you look here, these little cells in between the seminiferous tubules right here, those are your interstitial cells, or your cells of Leydig that produces testosterone and other male hormones, androgens and stuff. Okay, so in this activity, I want you to circle any one of the seminiferous tubules. On this one, I want you to circle or color the epididymis, and of course, you can do this if you want to see better. Okay, so let's talk about the formation of sperm cells. So it all starts in a male embryo. So this is while the little boy is in his mama's womb. And in a male embryo, the spermatogenic cells are undifferentiated, and they are called spermatogonia. So basically, they are stem cells. Okay, and each contain 46 chromosomes. So they have the full genetic material of that little boy, with half the chromosomes from its mama and half the chromosomes from its dad. And the sustentacular cells, also known as Sertoli cells, they support, nourish, and regulate those spermatogenic stem cells. So they're the support crew for those stem cells. And starting during the little boy's embryonic development, hormones start stimulating the spermatogonial cells to undergo mitosis. So mitosis is cellular division, where you're going to keep the same number of chromosomes and you're just making more of it. So basically, it just means that those sperm stem cells are just making more sperm stem cells, and we're increasing the pool of sperm stem cells. They will all have 46 chromosomes. They'll all be genetically identical. Okay. And then, but these two cells that are produced by mitosis will have different destinies. One cell, called type A, will remain a sperm cell, a spermatogonial cell, or a stem cell. And to continue mitosis, to continue just making more of the stem cells, right? The other cell, which is type B, or cell B, if you will, can become a primary spermatocyte. So that's the first step in the development of it becoming a sperm, okay? And if it undergoes a primary spermatocyte, it's going to undergo meiosis. I'm going to explain meiosis to you here in just a second. And but it stops there. Okay, so we don't have sperm cell production in the embryo. We just have some are going to stay stem cells, and some are going to start the process of a little bit of maturing and become what we call the primary spermatocytes. So they undergo the first step towards producing sperm, but then that's it. They're just getting everything started, and then it stops, and then at puberty, it's going to fully kick in. Okay, give me just a second. Okay, sorry for the interruption there. So then, under the influence of testosterone during puberty, the timing kind of depends on individuals, but let's say 12, 13 years old, the brain's going to start signaling to produce testosterone, and the boys are going to start developing more muscle mass, and the voice is going to start changing and all that kind of stuff. But also, these primary spermatocytes are going to now continue that process, and they're going to continue the division by meiosis and form what we call haploid secondary spermatocytes with 23 chromosomes. And I'll show you, it's just easier to see with the graphics. I'll have one coming up here. But basically, if you think about it, when egg meets sperm, you have to have half the genetic material in one and half the genetic material in the other so they can come together and make a full complement of chromosomes of 46 chromosomes. Okay. And again, I'm gonna break that down for you guys in a second. So these secondary spermatocytes will divide again, and they will form spermatids, and each of which will mature into a sperm cell. Spermatogenesis occurs continually in a male, starting at puberty and all the way till basically they die. Because that's why a lot like older men, even in their 80s or 90s, can still have children. The resulting sperm will collect in the lumen of those seminiferous tubules and then move to the epididymis to mature. So here is a graphic that I am going to use to explain meiosis. Okay, so we were with the primary spermatocyte. It just kind of was one of the divisions off of that stem cell, sperm stem cell, and it has 46 chromosomes, and each has 2 chromatids. So what the heck does this mean? What it means is there are 46 chromosomes, but they're each doubled. So if you look at it, for example, we're going to use this. If this is chromosome 1 and this is chromosome 2, and you have 23 pairs of those, okay? And you have 23 pairs because you have gotten one of chromosome 1 from mom, one of chromosome 1 from dad, okay? And so, and this is happening in the little boy. So he has had this chromosome, let's say this chromosome 1 is from mom, this chromosome 1 is from dad, and then this is chromosome 2, and so on. Okay, so this genetic material, this is one part of the chromosome, and this is the identical part. So this is chromosome 1 from mom, and this is a copy of chromosome 1 from mom. This is chromosome 1 from dad, and a copy of chromosome 1 from dad. Okay, same thing for here, but let's say it's chromosome 2 and so on and so on. Now the thing is this is where meiosis is they're not going to line up all the mom stuff on one side and all the dad stuff on the other side of that little boy's mom and dad and stuff where it got its genetic material, or teenage boy. They're going to mix up, okay, and so that's where you get that shuffling of the genetic material. So the first division is we're just going to separate them. So the chromosome 1 from dad and its copy are going to go in one cell here with the chromosome 2 and its copy, and the chromosome 1 from mom and its copy are going to go into another cell, okay? And that's what I mean. They still have 2 chromatids, okay? So now we've got 23 chromosomes, but each have 2 chromatids because we have 46 when we divide it in 2, so we have 23, but they're still doubled, okay? And so if you clip them where they're not attached, really in this cell you have 92, and in this cell you have 46, and that one you have 46, really. But so they call it 23 with 2 chromatids with these guys doubled, okay? And then you're going to have another cell division in which here you're going to have these 2 identical ones. They're going to divide up, and then you're going to have these sperm cells here where this is the one copy, let's say we said from mom, this is the other copy from mom, this is the one copy from dad, this is the other copy from dad. And so eventually these sperms are going to go on, and if they merge with an egg, these traits that are carried, that are eventually going, merge with the egg and stuff like that, would be the traits of the future baby's really grandparents, right? On the dad's side. So because the dad has a mix of the genetic material from their mom and their dad. So really interesting stuff when you think about it. And so with one primary spermatocyte, you have 2 meiotic divisions, and you have this shuffling then of these chromosomes here, where you have 4 sperm cells with 23 chromosomes, each having 1 chromatid, 1 copy. So we have 1 copy of chromosome 1, 1 copy of chromosome 2, 1 copy of chromosome 3, 1 copy of chromosome 4, and so on and so on. One of the sex chromosomes, which is the 23rd chromosome. And so from 1 you get 4 sperm cells. Not the same in the females. Females are just more complicated. Okay, and so this basically illustrates it from the edge here, the outer part of that seminiferous tubule. You would have the sperm cells, and then you have, as it divides and undergoes meiosis, and then you have the progressions going this way, and then these mature up into sperm, and then there will be an lumen, and they can move to the epididymis and stuff. So what is a sperm cell made of? So it has a head that has a haploid nucleus, so that means the 23 chromosomes with each like one copy, so one of chromosome 1, one of chromosome 2, etc., etc. A midpiece right here, that's its motor, basically, and a tail, that's its rotor, you know. So the midpiece has mitochondria. Mitochondria produce energy, right? And then this is the payload, basically. It's the nucleus. And then it has an acrosome, a little hat on, and that is what's going to be needed for it to like be able to burrow and get into the egg, to dissolve the egg. And so that's it. It's pretty easy to see. So the head has the genetic material in the acrosome. The mid piece has the mitochondria, and it will produce the energy to move the tail, which is the flagella here, and it will allow it to swim. Okay, so one primary spermatocyte will develop into how many sperm cells? The answers are 2, 3, or 4. Okay, so now let's talk about the internal accessory organs. So they're considered accessory organs because they're not directly involved in producing sperm, but they have a reproductive function. And so they are the epididymis, the epididymides, for plural, the ductus deferentia, the ejaculatory ducts, the urethra, the seminal vesicles, the prostate gland, and bulbourethral glands. So the epididymides are, each epididymis, so there's one on top of each testes, is a highly coiled tube that lays adjacent or next to the testes, kind of on top of it, right? And it leads from the testis to the vas deferens. The vas deferens is also known as the ductus deferens, and it's the tube that will convey the sperm eventually to the outside. It starts at the top of the testes, and then it descends to the bottom, and then it flips up and becomes the ductus deferens. It is a site of sperm maturation to become mobile and have the ability to fertilize an egg. So the sperm needs to mature up. It needs to get its midpiece, its flagella, and it has to have the acrosome, everything. Okay. So in this diagram, where does the sperm finish maturing? So if you just want to circle it, that would be just fine. Whatever color you want to pick is fine. So the ductus deferentia ductus deferens is a muscular tube that's about 45 centimeters in length, which is kind of a good length there. And it goes from the epididymis into the body cavity all the way to the ejaculatory duct. So there it unites and empties its content into the urethra. But as we saw in the diagram, it goes around that bladder. Okay. The seminal vesicles are the first sac-like structure that adds stuff to this vas deferens, and it's attached near the base of the urinary bladder. And during emission, so that's when sperm is coming out, the seminal vesicles secrete an alkaline fluid that has fructose. And that is to nourish the sperm, and it also produces prostaglandins to cause muscular contractions in the female tract to help propel the sperms to the egg cell. So why alkaline? Because the woman's vagina is acidic, and the acidity is damaging to the sperm. So the alkaline fluid or base fluid, so base versus acid, put them together, and you get a neutral pH, so neutralized fluid, and so that is allows the sperm to live better. And then fructose, because it needs it to power those mitochondria to produce energy to be able to swim. Okay, so where do you think the seminal vesicles are? I know this graph is slightly different than the one in your book, but just think about the location that's indicated. So where are your seminiferous tubules? I'm sorry, the seminal vesicles, not seminiferous tubules, seminal vesicles. Okay, next is the prostate gland. So the prostate gland is chestnut shaped, so it's like this shape, right? Chestnut, this shape, like a leaf shape in a way, except it's 3D, so it's you know, round. And it surrounds the urethra at the base of the urinary bladder. So you have the bladder, and then you have the prostate underneath that. And it secretes a thin, milky, slightly acidic fluid that contains citrate. Citrate is another nutrient for sperm. If you citrate is citric acid. If you go back and look at the production of ATP, it is needed in the mitochondria there to help in the production of ATP. So it has citrate. And then it also has prostate-specific antigen, or PSA, and that is an enzyme that helps to liquefy semen so that it can flow out. Okay, then the bulbourethral glands are small structures. They're located inferior to the prostate, and they secrete mucus to lubricate the tip of the penis during sex. So where's the prostate gland on our neat little diagram here? Okay, and then so I know it's not the same diagram, but if you can picture it in your mind, so you had your testes, your epididymis, ductus deferens here, going, or vas deferens going all the way around, top of the bladder, base of the bladder. This is the seminal vesicle, so it would have been at the base of the bladder. This is the prostate, bigger than the seminal vesicle, right? And then this little guy here is the bulbourethral gland, and they're going here into the urethra and out. Okay, so what is semen? Semen is a combination of the sperm cells. You can have 120 million sperms per milliliter, which is not much. It's like this much, right? Like the tip of my thumb kind of amount. It's not much at all. The secretion of the seminal vesicles, secretions of the prostate gland, and the secretions of the bulbourethral glands. All of that mixed together. A sperm cell cannot fertilize an egg until they undergo a process called capacitation within the female reproductive tract, and so we'll cover that then later. So the external reproductive organs, so that's what you can see obviously outside of the body. So they are the scrotum, which houses the testes and the penis. So the scrotum is a pouch of skin and subcutaneous tissue. It houses the testes suspended from the lower abdomen, posterior to the penis, or kind of behind the penis, right? It protects and helps regulate the temperature of the testes, because you need a specific temperature, not too hot, not too cold, to adequately produce sperm. And so they will, if it's really hot, they'll hang lower than the body, if your body's really hot. And if it's really cold or really cold outside, they'll pull them back up. Okay, the penis then is a cylindrical organ. It's made of specialized erectile tissue, which is the corpora cavernosa and the corpus spongiosum. They can gorge and swell with the blood, which is what then makes it become hard and therefore cause an erection. The penis is just designed to convey both urine and semen to the outside. And the corpus spongiosum, it encircles the urethra and enlarges at its distal end to form the glans penis, and it is covered by a loose fold of skin called a prepuce. And part of why it encircles the urethra is to keep the urethra from collapsing and leaving it an open passageway. So which one then would be the corpus spongiosum, according to this description I just gave you? And again, you can see it here. The corpus spongiosum is the one encircling the urethra, all the way around the urethra, and then the cavernosum is the one right there on top, at the top right here. And both can engorge with blood and cause an erection. So then we'll talk about that. So during sexual arousal, parasympathetic impulses, so again, in your nervous system, you have sympathetic, parasympathetic. For the parasympathetic is your rest and digest, but it's also sex. So rest, digest, sex, all the pleasurable stuff, right? And so you have to be not stressed for these things to happen well. So parasympathetic impulses start this whole process, and they trigger the release of nitric oxide, which then will increase blood flow to the erectile tissues of the penis, and that produces an erection. Then in the culmination of sexual stimulation, of course, you have orgasm, which in a male consists of the emission or movement of the sperm cells and all the secretions, semen basically, into the urethra by sympathetic impulses. So sympathetic impulses do work there too. And then ejaculation, which is the forcing of the semen to the outside. Then after ejaculation, those sympathetic impulses constrict the arteries, and the penis will return to the flaccid state. So if you'll remember, this is part of the autonomic nervous system, and parasympathetic and sympathetic always have opposing effects. Okay, so if parasympathetic starts the process, sympathetic will stop it. So for example, in here, parasympathetic starts the increase in blood flow and causes erection. Sympathetic will stop it, okay, and then cause it to go flaccid. For sleep, parasympathetic allows you to go to sleep, fall asleep. Sympathetic allows you to wake up. Okay. All right, so this is a video. I'm not going to play it here because it's going to be harder for me to narrate it. I have linked it underneath the Nearpod if you want to watch it. I think it's a pretty cool, fun little video. And ASAP Sciences, they have some really neat, fun stuff, and it's scientifically sound. And just, you can go down a rabbit hole of videos with them also, but they have quite a few of them on sex and stuff if that's something that you find interesting. They have all kinds of other stuff in there too that's kind of fun to watch. So let's talk a little bit about the hormonal control of the male reproductive function. So hormones are secreted by the hypothalamus, remember, in the middle of your brain, in the diencephalon, right? And also the anterior pituitary. So the hypothalamus stimulates the anterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary is going to release some hormones, and they're going to travel down to the testes, and then the testes are going to secrete some hormones too. So these hormones are made to control male reproduction and development of the secondary sexual characteristics. So all these male hormones basically are to produce sperm and to keep the guy looking like a guy. So it's going to even give them certain characteristics, like testosterone makes guys more aggressive, but also more protective. That's why guys, I guess, they're more likely to get into fights and stuff like that. They're also the ones that fight wars, although I'm not saying females can't. I'm just saying just the way their hormones are, they're just more apt to doing this kind of stuff. The testosterone and all that also kind of help maintains the muscle mass and the distribution of their muscles in the body and all that kind of stuff. So at the time of puberty, the hypothalamus senses that time is nearing, and it controls these many changes that will lead to the development of a reproductively functional adult. Now, if these hormones do not kick in, then you could have a male that's a eunuch, so he can't have kids and stuff because he doesn't produce sperm. His testes and his penis won't develop as much, won't grow as much, and all that kind of stuff, and he just will not make sperm, therefore cannot have any child. Now, there's a way to counter that. You have to basically give them these hormones that would normally be secreted by the hypothalamus and see if it can start everything going. So the hypothalamus releases the gonadotropin releasing hormones, GnRH. We talked about that in your first unit in the endocrine system. So those will trigger the production of the gonadotropins that are a luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. So luteinizing hormone is also known as LH, and its other name is interstitial cell stimulating hormone. But first they named it interstitial cell stimulating hormone, but then when they analyzed it, they said it's actually the exact same as luteinizing hormone, which they had named by what it does in the female reproductive tract, and they decided to just give it one name, and they just stuck with luteinizing hormone. So, and then the follicle stimulating hormone, also kind of named after its stimulating follicles in the female, but basically it does the same thing, and those are released from the anterior pituitary. So follicle stimulating hormone triggers the development of sperm in the male and triggers the development of the egg in the female. Okay, so it kind of has the same role. In the male, the luteinizing hormone or interstitial cell stimulating hormone stimulates those interstitial cells. What do those make? They make testosterone. So, and some of the other androgens and stuff. So that would be its main function. So here are their actions listed. So luteinizing hormone promotes the development of those interstitial cells that are in the testes around those seminiferous tubules, in between all of those seminiferous tubules, and those will secrete your male hormones, which the main one being testosterone. But it's like all the androgens. So there's more. Testosterone is the main one, but there are others. FSH then stimulates the supporting cystenticular cells, the ones that nourish those sperm stem cells, and to respond to the testosterone that's being produced via the stimulation of luteinizing hormones. So both of them have to be there and both of them have to happen. So then FSH together and then the testosterone and gets produced because of luteinizing hormone together can stimulate spermatogenesis. And so that's the development of sperm cells. The sustentacular cells can also secrete inhibin, which controls the release of FSH by negative feedback. So there's a fine balance between getting it to produce sperm, but not too much. And so it's a start, stop, kind of like everything else in the endocrine system. So the male sex hormones are called androgens, and testosterone is the most abundant of those. Testosterone is secreted in a fetus until birth, and then not again until puberty, after which it then will be continuously secreted. And the secretion of testosterone in a fetus allows that fetus to differentiate into a male. And if this is messed with and all that, you can have some weird, characteristics that develop. And so it's really interesting to see the effect of the hormones that are produced or the hormones that are around from the mom on the development of the fetus. So the main job of testosterone is to stimulate the development of the male reproductive organs in utero. So make sure that they get, testes and the scrotum and the penis and all of that stuff gets developed in the little baby boy. And also when puberty kicks in to mature those organs up, right? And then testosterone is also responsible for all what we call the all male secondary sexual characteristics. So the deep voice, the body hair starts showing up, the thickening of the skin, the increased muscular and skeletal growth. They all of a sudden get taller, they develop more muscle mass and stuff, and just develop into a male. It also increases the rate of cellular metabolism and red blood cell production. So their red cells amount go up because their muscle mass goes up, so they need more oxygen and more nutrient delivery and all that kind of stuff. And because they have more muscle mass, they'll have a higher metabolism, and they can basically eat and eat and eat and eat. And anybody that's been around teenage boys know they can eat a lot. So for this one, match up the hormone with what it does. And so how are these hormones regulated? So again, there's a negative feedback system that involves the hypothalamus, and it regulates quantities of testosterone. So, it's just like the thermostat stuff. You need enough testosterone so the production will go up, and then we got enough, and then so it'll start dropping back down and go back up, back down, back up. So as the concentration of blood testosterone increases, the hypothalamus will become inhibited, and stimulation of the anterior pituitary will decline. As the amount of LH drops in response, the amount of testosterone is reduced, and we go down. And then testosterone levels do decline somewhat after the male climacteric or orgasm. So basically saying that right after sex, your testosterone levels are down, and then they'll come back up. Also, for males, your testosterone levels will always be higher in the morning and lower at night. So you have kind of a diurnal pattern, a daily pattern of producing more in the morning, and because it also gives you energy and stuff, makes you feel good, and then it'll be lower at night. That's regular things. And so this diagram kind of explains it. So hypothalamus makes GnRH. It stimulates the anterior pituitary to make LH and FSH. They travel down the bloodstream. They reach the testes. FSH will stimulate meiosis in your primary spermatocytes to form immature sperm cells. And then FSH stimulates the secretion of inhibin by the supporting cells. And then LH stimulates the interstitial cells to secrete the androgens, primarily testosterone. So that happens. Then inhibin gets in the bloodstream. Your androgens, primarily testosterone, get into the bloodstream. They go and have their effects. So those androgens are going to cause increased muscular growth, thickening and strengthening of bone, and thickening of the skin, enlargement of your accessory reproductive organs. So their penis gets larger and all that kind of stuff. Enlargement of the larynx and the thickening of the vocal cords, so the voice deepens. Increased growth of body hair on the face, chest, axillary, and pelvic regions. And then the inhibin is going to go back and give feedback, and the testosterone also goes back and gives feedback, negative feedback to the pituitary and the hypothalamus. So they prevent oversecretion of the GnRH, they prevent oversecretion of luteinizing hormone, and the inhibin prevents oversecretion of FSH. The androgens turn off LH, the inhibin turns off FSH. And so, but it's a fine balance, right? It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. Like I said, usually on a daily kind of cycle. Okay, so if you have any questions here on the male reproductive system or anything we've talked about, or curiosity questions, put in here, and continue part 2 in the female reproductive system here.